building an agreed upon architecture of how they were going to implement SOA in as a secure fashion as they could. So again, on top of everything else, we gotta jump ahead on that. Like Roman said before, at any given time, there's about 30 different applications on the table, and these aren't small applications. These are very big applications, lots and lots of documentation. So there's a lot of work to do, and all this kind of mushes down into security in the SDLC, the software development lifecycle, which I'm going to go to this slide. This is our kind of our software development lifecycle, or an abstract of it that's designed to fit into anyone else's SDLC. And these little red boxes are where we stick our noses in. So we present this, straight from the top. This is all the business stuff. This is the agency going to get money and prove to somebody that there's a value prop. And again, in there, if there's an RFP released, IT security requirements jam right in there. Eventually, they get their money. We require them to classify their data, and we're there, and we make sure it gets done properly. When they define technical requirements, we're there to make sure that those technical requirements are actually being properly met. Then they go ahead, and they come back with us a little while later, and then now we go through design. This is where we do the majority of our work, I think. It's going back and forth with them saying, no, you really can't do it that way. You should really do it this way. Or we can't do it that way. It tends to be back and forth, but this is where we are. And what we have at our disposal are clear policies and standards that we can use to leverage, because we can show them where they're not complying. Fast forward to development and test. We have tools that we require them to use. And then this little box over here has always been a point of contention. My management was concerned that I was putting a brick wall, and that was sending the wrong message that we impede progress. There's no gate in Visio. I couldn't find one, so the only thing we had there was a wall. But in reality, we have to be an impediment, because for some of the vendors who we work with over and over again really understand what we're trying to do, and they're easy to work with. But there's some vendors who don't get it, and for the most part, they're not going live, they're not deploying unless they meet all of our requirements, and that's my little brick wall over there. So Roman's going to talk a little bit about some of our success stories, because we've actually had some.
So talk about success. Basically, we've seen through the process, as David said, some of our vendors, don't comply. Some of our vendors have problems. But as we take people and developers and vendors through the process, we find that when new applications come in from the same organization, they tend to have much less problems. They tend to know exactly what to expect from us, and eventually, the application itself that they're developing is more secure. They know exactly that they need to meet these certain documentation requirements. They know exactly that they have to pass certain application scans. They know exactly what we're looking for, and we know exactly that what we're looking for is basically a secure application. Sometimes we also have to really go back and forth with developers to explain, well, no, cross-site scripting really is a vulnerability. And I had this experience where I had to, a number of times, had to explain, well, yes, it is. Well, and sometimes you actually have to go and show them, well, look, I can bring a pop-up box. Look, I can do this. I can actually get your data through SQL injection, and this is how we find it. And unfortunately, it's sometimes that the issue has to get escalated, but eventually they do get it. Eventually, they do understand the fact that security is in fact important, and that the application is really not going live, no matter what the mayor wants, or no matter what really happens. If it exposes social security numbers to the public, it's not going to go live. Security it's a different world now, and it's just not happening. One of the success stories that we like to talk about is how we actually had a global effect. We actually found that a significant cross-site scripting vulnerability in one of the underlying frameworks, Java frameworks that of a CMS. Basically, there was something that you can expose that vulnerability and cause significant damage. And what we also found that it wasn't just our application that was using this framework. There was lots of applications throughout the city, and as a matter of fact, similar applications throughout the world that use this particular framework. And that are exposed to this vulnerability. What we actually did, it's a small, it's a medium company, a small to medium company that actually develops this framework. It's very easy to use, very good from the development perspective. Unfortunately, what this company did not get is how to build secure applications. So instead of basically throwing them away, we decided we're going to partner with them. And what we did is we worked with them, and we explained, closely working with their developers, closely working with their management of why it is important, why is it important to build applications securely. And we showed them our process. That's why I was just up there just before. We showed it to them, and they basically said, yeah, we're going to subscribe to exactly the same thing. Yet we're using this process for many applications. They're going to use this process for their particular application. They had pretty much adapted our process. They started scanning their code for the vulnerability scanners. They started doing code reviews. They started doing design reviews, design security reviews, and in a way, we believe that we really had a global impact, because this particular application is used in many different places throughout the world. It's something that we feel we contributed to the community by using the use of this process.
It's actually kind of funny. They actually, when they brought a security consulting company in, and I keep in mind, this is a software development company. They brought a bunch of security consultants in to review their whole thing, and they were sharing the reports with us back and forth. They were asking for, the consultants that they hired would come up with a report. They'd send it to us and ask us what we thought was wrong, and what do we think they should do. It was a very unique experience. But again, this is what we're seeing globally. It's no secret that Accenture or Bearing Point and a lot of these organizations are always doing work for the city and doing work for every big organization. And their teams who work for the city have totally changed the way that they do things. Because we don't really have to, there's very few arguments. In fact, we have one consultant from Accenture who works with us a lot on a lot of things. And he knows, he'll come into a meeting now and go, guys, I know you're not going to like this. And he starts drawing out pictures. He'll go, you probably don't like this. So I already proposed that they kindly do this instead. Is that okay? And it's like, sure. It's saving us time. And it's actually saving him time too, but and again, it's all because of this process. One thing I did want to go back on before we hit this next slide. We couldn't do this whole big process, if it weren't for the elements in that slide that I spoke about at first, which are clear policies, a clear architecture. All these elements are critical for us doing our job, because it's kind of like it's a preemptive strike, so to speak. It gives us, people know where to go to read things, and it gives us tools. It's not just now that Dave is saying you have to do something. It's an accepted policy for the city. And by the way, we can then turn around and say, you know what, Owasp agrees with us, and if we really have to, NIST agrees with us. It's a great approach that makes it very difficult for them to argue about, because there's plenty of organizations like Owasp who are showing that this stuff is true. So, who can guess how big the accreditation team is for the city of New York? How many people are funded to do the work? And if you were at my presentation yesterday, don't answer. How many people are funded in the city of New York to do all this work that we're talking about, these 30 applications? 4. Anyone else?
You too.
0. There is absolutely no funding for this project, and we just have to do it. Sorry, we had to throw it in there.